So with that, I'll make a motion to open our public comment period. Do I have a second? From Jerry Batari. All in favor say aye. Thank you very much. The first person to sign in for public comment is Esther Baitler. Esther, thanks for helping us with the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. And don't forget about the 3-minute rule.
Well, I'm waiting for a plaque from all of you on the board.
Thank you, Esther.
Now, number 2,
Esther?
Aluf Plastics is a mess. The odors are far from gone. It is toxic. There was a nail polish company that had a fire in New Windsor. Aluf should not be there. It's awful. People are smelling this stuff. It's not right. My sister lives in Blauvelt, and she talks to people. And it's not appropriate. I really think James Slavin should get a handle on it, giving them summonses and violations.
I think we're all together on that one, Esther.
I think it's time that everybody get a handle on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather see venture community residences in that LIO zone, but not Aloof. You gotta be kidding me. It was on Channel 12 tonight. What's it gonna take for you people to get them closed? I would
Esther.
like to thank Jim and Stefan
We all thank
for
Jim
the
and Stefan.
sidewalks that says Esther's Way. It's not in gold yet, but it will happen.
Great. Mr. DeSalvio.
Yeah, it's just tough to follow.
Tough act to follow.
I'll try and be nice. Steve Del Savio, 262 Trenton Place in Orangeburg, and thanks for giving me this opportunity. I've owned this property for 35 years, bordering an LIO zone, which was basically a simple corporate park when I moved in. My property has been substantially devalued by recent decisions of the planning and zoning boards. I always thought we should have trust in our government to protect our concerns and follow the law. I've gone to several board meetings and have found that this is not the case, and in fact have been ignored and residents have been ignored and disrespected. I'll give examples later. I filed an Article 78 against the town, which has been quite an expense to me because I feel town government hasn't abided by the law and I must protect my rights. The LIO zones, specifically on Ramland Road and Corporate Drive off Blaisdell Road, have become industrial sites. Again, they are LIO zones, not LI zones, and our boards don't seem to know the difference. There are several warehouses. By the way, anybody go to the Clarence warehouse sale? That big sign you saw all over, warehouse. Nowhere do I see in an LIO zone on any tables, any special permits, any conditional permits, that warehouses are allowed in LIO zones. They're all over the place. And the zoning board and planning board keep giving them approvals to go further and further. Not only that, then they give them variances. They get height variances. They're not even supposed to be there, and they're getting height variances. They're getting outdoor loading docks, and the town refuses to see the cumulative adverse effects of all these approvals. The department has incorrectly, the building department, has incorrectly allowed these applications to even reach the planning board. I can only hope that our new director will look into this. I just wanted to give you some examples of what went on. At the planning board, I've never heard well, I did hear, a planning board chairman saying that we should not have purchased property abutting an LIO zone. How can he say that? How can he say that? When I moved here, my answer to him is, when I moved here, I read the code, and I knew what could be done behind me and what can't be done. If anything, the planning board and zoning boards should read what our code is, and maybe they, enforce it and, protect all the residents here. Before my time runs out, at the planning board meeting, I brought up the issue that the zoning board minutes hadn't been approved yet. I was ignored. I brought up the issue that they probably need a use variance to build in that area. I was ignored. Then I asked the planning board, let's assume I'm okay with their variances and everything. You, the planning board, can now decide. You have jurisdiction on the rear yard. So I said, please ask Subaru to eliminate the rear parking so I can have an additional rear parking and a rear drive, so I can have an additional 60 feet of buffer from my house. I was ignored, completely ignored. Somebody on the planning board mumbled, it's a fire code. I don't think that's true. I mean, I thought maybe it would be true, but if it is true, I want the code enforcer to go back and count 13 buildings in those two parks that I saw that don't have any kind of fire road behind them for fire code. So they just play along. And then after I said that, I said, okay, maybe they need the fire code, maybe they need a road. What about the parking? Not even a discussion, not even a question to Subaru, can you get rid of that parking for the town? So just, you know, there's other things. I'm over my time.
Thanks. Well,
In
it'd be
conclusion,
great if you could, you know, because you can't say everything in 3 minutes, if you could provide a document or copy of your comments or
Oh,
email
definitely,
that would
definitely.
describe that.
all right, I'm just saying, had our
Thanks.
boards, in conclusion, had the boards followed the codes and laws with competence, it would be completely unnecessary for a resident such as myself to go to the time and expense, and it's not cheap, and the expense of defending my property while filing an Article 78. I'm shocked that our town government has gotten to this point. Thank you.
Liz Dudley?
Liz Dudley, Orangeburg. I actually have a statement that we had about 258 people sign. It might take me 1 extra minute to read it.
Read fast.
I'm asking for pre-approval.
Thank you.
Okay. Clean Air for Orangetown is continuing with our advocacy for cleaner air. Our concerns over air quality and odors cannot be ignored. The town board must take further action to address the ongoing pollution in our community. Residents have been advocating for ambient air testing in the area around Aluf Plastics, located on Route 303 in Glenshaw Street in Orangeburg, for over a year. It's actually going to be going on 2. In August 2017, the town of Orangetown hired TRC Solutions to conduct ambient air testing in the vicinity of Aluf Plastics. Over the years, a factory has been cited with air pollution control law violations by the New York Department of Environmental Conservation, has had fires, explosions, and accidents resulting in worker injuries. The Phase 1 report was released in October 2017, and the report states, results from the VOC samples collected during Phase 1 of this monitoring program indicate 4 compounds that exceed their corresponding levels. The New York State DEC updates the SGCs and the AGCs every 3 years and presents them in concentrations for acrolein, benzene, carbon tetrachloride, and hexachloridine. Sorry about that one. That one's a really long one. Exceeds either the SGC or the AGC in 1 or more of the samples. After receiving these concerning air quality results, the town of Orangetown hired TRC toxicologist Karen Ventrano, PhD, to write a health assessment. According to the TRC website, her past clients have included Chevron, ExxonMobil, General Electric, PG&E, and CRN Railway Company. This report states that the TRC does not believe that exposure to these measured concentrations would result in negative health effects. A team of the local physicians and scientists is challenging this assessment, in part because the toxicologist is only considering short-term guidelines in her assessment. If these concentrations are representative of our daily air quality through most of the year, because it is a 24-hour operation 6 days a week, these toxins might cause adverse health effects to residents who are exposed for months and years of their lives. Complaints to the town and county of noxious odors have been going for years. Clean Air for Orangetown believes that the results of the ambient air testing must not be dismissed by our elected officials. Both the odor and the air quality must be studied. Although they are related, the air quality and the odor must be examined independently. Okay, I only have this one last page, and it's a little bit less.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. The following concerned residents statement has been signed by 258 residents, and it follows. We, the residents of Orangetown, believe the results from the 3 24-hour tests in the community air canister tests indicate a need for further ambient air testing. We agree with TRC Solutions' suggestions of additional air sampling as mentioned in their October 2017 report, that TRC suggests adding sampling for aldehydes in accordance with the US EPA method TO-11. Number 2, we request that the annual guideline concentrations, AGC, be used as a reference because the residents and students have been and continue to be exposed to this air over many months and years. Number 3, we request that the odors be further investigated as separate from the air toxins present. The odors are a separate and distinct issue which adversely affects our quality of life. The continuance of the noxious odors is an ongoing violation of Orangetown Code on Odors 4.182 and 4.11. Residents have been complaining about the odors from this factory for over a decade. And number 4, we believe that the air sampling in our community should continue to be conducted independently from the odor events. We also request that comprehensive soil and analysis around the surrounding neighborhoods commence as soon as possible. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, benzene vapor is heavier than air and may sink into low-lying areas. The result of the 24-hour canisters tests indicate that toxins are present in the air, whether there is odor present or not. Therefore, odor should not be the only indicator of air pollution in this area. I just wanted to close with, we live down the street from it, and we are smelling it on a daily occurrence. It has not gone any better, and I was really disappointed to see that after the holy grail of the fixes going in, that we did not do a walkthrough of this, huge warehouse to make sure that the fans were closed down and there were not holes in the building. That's something that should fall onto the town. The DEC does their part. The town should be working with them, combining the efforts to bring them under, to make this town not have to deal with all the odors. I personally believe that you should start taking extruders away. When they get to a point that you don't smell them, then that's their operating capacity. They have reached it, they've gone over, and it's causing all these problems. Thank you.
Good suggestion. Heather Hurley.
Good evening, Town Board. Heather Hurley, Pearl River. I hate to go from something so celebratory with the girls' soccer team to something so toxic, but I find it still incomprehensible to me why a seemingly misleading and incomplete published statement by Councilman Divney regarding certain emissions from this facility remains on his website. My first request for him to retract his published statement from October 24th was made in the November 1st issue of the Our Town newspaper. A town-wide campaign mailer was sent out to residents after my initial request with both Councilman Divney's and Councilman Troy's names on it, again with omissions about elevated levels of toxins in the air sampling results around the Aluf Plastics neighborhood. This, in my opinion, is inexcusable and irresponsible for elected officials to continue to spread misleading and incomplete information to the public at large who may not follow this issue closely. It is a gross deficiency in the role of elected officials, and it appears to me that it was used solely for political gain, which in turn proves more reprehensible to me. I am once again requesting that Councilman Divney retract his statement from October 24th, and I request that the current members of the entire town board and Supervisor-elect Chris Day to encourage him to retract and revise this statement. It would be remiss if they didn't, and if they didn't advocate for the dissemination of complete and accurate information to be distributed to the community, especially now, given the second set of recent comments by TRC received on November 10th stating that levels of certain chemical concentrations again exceed the New York State DEC threshold level guidelines. After reading the town memo dated November 22nd, I was shocked to read that some of the information provided to the community that detailed some of the next steps that the town would take, considering many of these steps are what members of Clean Air for Orangetown suggested to the supervisor and Councilman Divney at that table in this very room on January 30th, 2017. This is negligent, in my opinion, in waiting this long to pursue using an olfactometer. The residents have been advocating for this and presented you with information on this equipment, pricing, and where to purchase it nearly 10 months ago. This is a slap in the face to the community that you are now releasing a memo with this kind of information. We informed the town of an odor expert. Members of Clean Air for Orangetown hired one with our own money from Canada, and a professional analysis was submitted to the New York State DEC and the town in early July 2017 with a professional analysis of odor mitigation equipment, and it was ignored. With all the talk of money being spent on more consultants, why is the town requesting that Corlapara Engineering, a company specifically hired by Aluf Plastics, to be the one to conduct a site inspection of Aluf Plastics? Why isn't the town hiring an independent engineering firm to conduct the inspection? This course of action in pursuing Corlapara shows a total disregard to an independent process. The public has been showing up for almost 2 years, though these smells have been going on for much longer. We've let the process play out, as we were told to do nearly 2 years ago, only to have burning plastic noxious odors continue to invade their neighborhoods and schools with little to non-existent verification and enforcement. It is my hope that the community continues to remain engaged and involved in this issue and know that their fellow community members will continue showing up and speaking out until this issue is completely resolved.
Allison Sullivan, you still here?
Hello. Good evening. Allison Sullivan, Blauvelt, New York. I just wanted to read you something from Aluf's website, the Aluf community. They give a lot of information on there, a lot of misinformation on there, but I'm just going to read one sentence that kind of sums it up. Further town, New York State DEC and EPA testing proves Aluf Plastics is not the source of VOCs or odors in Orangetown. This is an outright lie. And I want to know what each of your opinions is on that. I sent an email a week ago asking each of you about this, and I got no response. We have emails and documentation proving noxious odors are coming from Aluf, and I feel it is irresponsible for the town board to not address this. The goal is to get rid of the noxious plastic odors that Aluf is putting out and what they say other companies are putting out. I really don't care where it's coming from. I think it's the town's job to figure that out and stop it. They're spewing odors into our neighborhood, to my neighborhood and others' neighborhoods, damaging my property values and my enjoyment of my home, giving me anxiety on the possible adverse long-term health effects this could be exposing to my family. You will never get results unless Aluf is held accountable, and you have failed to do that. You've set the precedent for the manufacturers in this area and have allowed the residents' rights to take a back seat. I'm discouraged and I'm disappointed because I feel I've been strung along. I've done everything the town has asked me to do. I've taken air samples, I've given out air samples, I've chased the odors, I've tried to determine where they come from with hopes but nothing seems to help. All you have done is stall with hopes this would disappear. You have failed to verify and document where the odors are coming from, even though the town code states you have the right to do so. So here we are, 22 months later. We are no better off than where we started. What are you going to do? That's it.
Mike Smith.
Mike Smith, 65 A Street, Blauvelt. I just wanted to say a couple things. I'm encouraged by the progress that the DEC has made with Aluf in installing the new systems, and I'm also encouraged by the town's efforts to do some testing on their own. That was, all positive stuff. It's obviously a little too early to be able to tell how effective the installation is going to be. It depends a lot on weather, wind direction, their manufacturing process, all that. So we'll see over time. But thanks for backing the efforts of the DEC to get that taken care of, and thanks for the testing. I do want to say, though, that there's still some concerning things going on here in the town. It's my understanding, that Avery Dennison is also a polluter and a contributor to the fragrances or odors around here. And I find it a little disconcerting that the town wouldn't have made greater efforts to work with those two issues, Aluf and Avery, in parallel with one another. And it's a little disconcerting as well to hear some of the statements about how the town can't really determine where the odor is coming from. You've got the power to do that. You certainly have the ability and the will of the people to back you in that regard. Yet you're legally able to investigate and inspect those facilities. So it's really, disappointing, somewhat inexcusable to say at this point that you can't isolate those smells. You get reports of something going on, send a personnel to the facility and inspect it in person at that moment. You have the ability to do it, you should. This evening, as an example, was a very, very strong fragrance. Not the plastic smell traditionally, it was more of a sweet smell, VOC based, I would say. And from my conversations with DEC in the past, probably most likely Avery, and from my inspection this evening, I walked the path and I drove around. It seemed to be coming from that direction. Very difficult to tell definitively because the discharge is well over your head, takes some time for it to dissipate and get to the ground level, but my best guess would have been Avery. It's something you would still want to address. And I also wanted to add that the TRC report shows elevated contaminants, VOCs in particular. And although the representative, the doctor, mentioned that although these levels are elevated and exceed what would be normally reasonable levels, that there's no real danger to the public. But she was unable to confirm that these tests were taken during periods of actual odor incidents. She said maybe one was in parallel with or in conjunction with a particular odor issue. So in order to be able to do effective testing, obviously, I think you need to correlate it with the particular incidents because of the so many variables that occur and where and when the odors are projected across the town. So it's something I think additional testing is warranted, and you want to correlate it with events as we've talked about for 2 years. So again, we're making some progress, but there's a lot more to do. I don't want you guys to stop the pressure. Thank you.
We're not. Mike Mandel.
Good evening, Supervisor Stewart, members of the Town Board. For the record, Michael Mandel, a resident of Pearl River. Just a couple of things I want to discuss, not with Aluf, but today I went on the website, 5:26 this afternoon, still no agenda on the website. I was here at the workshop. I know what was supposed to be discussed, but we know in the past we've added things and we've taken things off. This is not the way it should be. When the town clerk's office had the responsibility for putting out the agenda, that agenda was put out when meetings were Monday night, they were out on Friday. When they were on Tuesday, they were out on Monday. 5:26 in the afternoon is no way to be able to read an agenda with new items, with items removed. It's not a professional way. And as we all know, anybody who has put out documents in the past, is one word you put on top of it until it's final, draft. And if that can't be done, there's something wrong with the whole process in this town.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Neil Meltzer. I'm a resident of Tapan. I've lived here for 13 years, happily. I'm married, I have 2 kids, and the reason I'm here for the first time is because of this Aluf issue. It does concern me. It got me out of the house. It got me to attend one of these meetings, and it's probably taken too long. So I'm not going to say much about the specifics. I think the other presenters did do a great job at alluding to what's going on here, and I can tell you that I am not the only one that is concerned about this. And to put it simply, this is not kosher. Whatever's going on here with those corporations, whatever's going on how you guys are handling it, something is not kosher. And we all are very concerned about it. And, we get that feeling. If we want to live in this town still, we have to put all the stuff that we do, the stuff that you guys do here every week, every month, all the politics, all the community, all the family stuff, everything that you do, the purpose of it, goes to waste if there are people in this community that are going to get sick, that are going to die from all these carcinogens in our environment, in our air. None of this matters. It doesn't. My saying always was health first, and this is not a good situation here. It's not. I mean, you can deny as much as you want, but then it might creep up, you know, in your backyard, in your own home. And something really should be done about this. And I applaud all the people that have come and stood in front of this board for many years trying to do something about this. And you know, the reason I'm here is because not only is it coming towards my home, but it's coming towards my son's schools. It's coming towards Cottage Lane, the middle school right up the street, and then eventually when they're in high school. Bottom line is this: I don't know if I want to be here. And we might get a reputation for, do you want to live in Orangetown? Because this is a toxic town. So where do our property values go? Not to say that this is amusing or not to be harsh about it, but hey, I can always sell my house to some of the Hasidic Jews. At least that's a glass half full, huh? Something has to be done about this. It really does. From a concerned citizen, family person, school teacher. Thank you.
Cheryl McNeil. Cheryl McNeil.
Hello, Town Board. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I've spoken here before as a librarian at the Orangeburg Library. I'm here tonight as a homeowner. I live at 56 Old Western Highway in Blauvelt. I've owned that home for 10 years, and I'm here to speak about the effect that Aluf Plastics is having. The next person on your public comment list is Martine Littlewood. She's a very close friend of mine, and she lives right next door to me on Old Western. She is not here. She's at a parent-teacher conference and was going to try and get here, but said she can't. I would like to pass on what she had to say as well, because she asked me to. We came out here, I came out here in large part because of the work that Clean Air Orangetown has done, and so I'd like to thank them. This is my first time speaking on this, but I will be showing up at the future town board meetings, and I know that Martine will be here as well, and probably our husbands. I think there needs to be some rabble-rousing going on here, and I'm glad that there's a lot going on social media. I think you're going to have a lot more people showing up here to complain. You know, we can't be quiet about this because, as the speakers have said before, this has been going on for way too long. So my first acquaintance with Aluf was when I went on the beautiful Rails to Trail trail that you guys have built, and I have to assume that at least hundreds of thousands, if not well over $1 million, has been spent on that. I don't know what. All that money has gone into this beautiful creation, and now we can't enjoy it. I go out there on my bike, I go out there to walk the dog, and all I can smell is this horrible, like, flowery scent. And sometimes it's that, sometimes it's a plasticky smell. And my understanding is that this has been going on for years and that the town board knows about it, and yet it's still happening. So I think that's completely unacceptable. Martine is completely up in arms about this because she said that she came home from work today, and again, this is Blauvelt, so we're quite far removed from it, and yet the first thing she smelled when she got out of the car was Aluf Plastics. And her concern is that she has small children. I also have a child who's 17. The schools are right there. Cottage Lane is right close to us, just a few blocks away. These children are out at recess at the very time that these smells are wafting across our community. And we know that they are not just smells, they also contain carcinogens. When everything happened with Flint, Michigan, I think a lot of us were like, okay, how does that happen? How does this happen for years and years and years, and this community is affected? And nothing gets done until children start being poisoned and dying. What I'm seeing here, what Martina's seeing, is that something similar may be happening here, and that's really scary. So it's not just about property values, which we're also concerned about. It's about our children and about our health. And we expect you, as our elected officials, to do something about this. Because corporations, as we know, will get away with what they can. But we elect you. This is the whole point of democratic government, is that you make a business-friendly environment, but you hold them accountable. So please, do your job.
Thank you. Tracy Hancock? Tracy still here? Welcome, Tracy.
Hi, Tracy Hancock from Pearl River. I came tonight to ask if the town was still considering addressing the issues of the flooding of Muddy Creek. I think the town's been aware of that for a few years, and forgive me if I just haven't heard any news on it for a while, but we know that Muddy Creek is being choked by vegetation in some areas. There are structure problems, there's garbage, and in light of the clear cutting of 8 acres of trees and adjacent property, the hillside property, I think it is something that should be dealt with sooner rather than later and before the next big storm comes. That's all I came here to say, basically, but I do feel compelled to address the second gentleman who spoke tonight. Just as part of a group of neighbors who were fighting to save our neighborhood from the hillside development, we dealt with some of the same issues. We dealt with the zoning board that gave out variances without considering the community. We dealt with the planning board that dismissed legitimate concerns that we had. We dealt with disrespectful treatment from the planning board chair. We're dealing now with the loss of our property values. And so this is a problem, and it's obviously not just a problem in our neighborhood, it's a problem in many neighborhoods. It might be too late to save my neighborhood, which was once really beautiful. And what I fear, just listening here tonight, is that we're losing Orangetown one neighborhood at a time.
Hi, I'm Ivania Alpert. I'm from Piermont. I'm a physician, and I've been an assistant professor at an academic medical research center for over 10 years now. I was also a member of a team of physicians who developed initial guidelines for the Department of Health on preventing lead poisoning in pregnant and breastfeeding women. What's happening in Orangetown is, like the other speaker said, our Flint. Given my background, I actually feel quite comfortable looking at the data that was collected by TRC Solutions, and I feel comfortable comparing it to Mr. Divany's cheery pre-election statements about how Aluf Plastics poses no health risks, and that the levels are, and this is a quote, the levels are not, now I can't read my handwriting, of the, never mind, I can't read my handwriting to see his direct quote, but basically that the levels are fine and not anything to be concerned about. As a physician, reading through Dr. Vetrano's findings about the air quality, I actually am extremely concerned about what I saw. There's two questions that we need to address, and we need to look at the data differently in order to answer each of these questions. So the first question is, what are the short-term health effects from this pollution? And this applies to folks who are just there infrequently. So somebody who, goes for a run occasionally on the rail trail, or a landscaper who goes to Blauvelt for a few hours a week. And Dr. Vetrano did answer this question. So there's one substance, acrolein, that appears to exceed federal and state limits for short-term safety. This is an irritant. It can lead to respiratory problems, and is especially a problem for people with asthma who are exercising in the area. The second question that I think is more important is, what are the long-term health effects from this pollution on people who are exposed to this air on a regular basis? This includes students and employees at all the local schools, Cottage Lane, South Orangetown Middle School, Teasy High School, Dominican College. It includes people who work in Blauvelt's industrial zone. And it's not so straightforward what happens here. I think it's fair to say, if we assume that the 3 days of measurements that were taken in August, if that is typical of what every day is like, and there's no reason to assume that that's not the case, then we have a major problem on our hands. So the average levels over those 3 days, specifically of 4 compounds, but most notably of acrolein, are through the roof compared to New York and New Jersey norms. We should be extremely concerned about these long-term exposure rates. We have children who attend schools there for years, residents who live there for decades, and it is not at all clear that this is safe. Dr. Vitrano did not address these long-term concerns in her report, and this needs to be studied further. So the take-home message from the board at the last meeting was there's nothing to worry about, don't worry about it. There's actually a lot to worry about. When we look at the air quality in and around Blauvelt, we see the air is polluted with acrolein to a level that exceeds the level in any New Jersey county by 20-fold. That's not the air I want my kids breathing. As a physician, I'm concerned not just for my own children, but also for the well-being of the entire community. This problem goes beyond an odor problem. It's very concerning that the town has allowed Aluf Plastics to continue operating in the presence of such alarming data. I urge you to stop any additional development in this area until you can review the long-term safety of this type of chemical exposure and guarantee the health of Orangetown residents.
I think I saw a hand up. Dimitri?
Members of the board, Dimitri Lattis of Piermont. I wanted to take a moment to read a letter that a group of colleagues and I have put together that addresses this very issue of Aluf and the industrial complex on 303 and what it's doing to the air around there. So, dear Orangetown Town Board, we are concerned health professionals in Orangetown. There are 4 emissions toxins whose levels are measured to exceed New York State annual guideline concentrations in the residential and recreational areas around the Aluf Plastics industrial zone in Blauvelt. Intermittent, short-term exposures to these chemicals at the measured levels is unlikely to cause health effects beyond what has been reported by residents. However, if these concentrations are representative of daily air quality through most of the year, then the exposure to these toxins might cause adverse health effects to residents, students, and those employed in the area who may be exposed on a daily basis over months or years. Especially at risk are the young and the old, and those with previous health concerns such as asthma, cancer, or compromised immune systems. Further long-term testing is suggested to confirm these findings, and mitigation measures which would improve the air quality surrounding the Aluf industrial zone are warranted. Additionally, the concentrations of acrolein were elevated to a degree that may pose health risks even during a short 1-hour exposure. Any discussion regarding any proposed additional industrial activity in the vicinity should be guided by these findings, which show pollution levels already exceeding New York State thresholds. And this is signed by Dr. Robert Wells, Lorraine Vitale, RN, Dr. Nellie Vega Wu, DNP, Dr. Maria Jose Romero, PhD, Dr. Catherine O'Connor, MD, myself, Dr. Kathleen Kelly, DNP, Dr. Peter Gordon, MD, Dawn Howie, RN, Bernadette Delaccio, RN, Dr. Raphael Caniza, DDS, Miriam Byrne, nutritionist, and Dr. Vanya Albert. So, why is there this disconnect between what we heard here over a month ago with the toxicologist and what you can all see on that graphic I'm giving you? And it comes down to something actually that in my conversation with Dr. Vitrano that I had the other day, and thank you, Mr. Divany, for setting that up. She said one thing which was very poignant. It all comes down to the backgrounds. That's the crux of it. And the backgrounds she chose to use. I'm sorry?
No, I just couldn't hear you say the word backgrounds before.
Okay. The backgrounds that she chose to use to tell us all that we were within background range were EPA monitored sites across the US. These are ugly, ugly places, a lot of them, okay? And that is not what we want to be compared to. What I've done in the graphic is try to compare it to something which I think is more appropriate. Normal values across the US, some of which are in the same document that she cited. Counties throughout New Jersey, every county in New Jersey, many-fold lower than what we're measuring here. So now, is acrolein something that's going to kill you on the spot? No. And that's where perhaps her comments regarding safety can be accepted. But if we are exposed to these things over time, we have to look at small amounts that would affect our health over a cumulative period. And that is really, that's where the disconnect comes in. And it comes into what backgrounds we look at. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dimitri. Any other hands up? I see Jamie Ross. Jamie?
Hi, my name's James Ross. I'm from Nyack. I'm an air pollution scientist, and I'm also going to speak on the Aluf issue, and the views that I'm going to tell you represent myself and my supervisor, Dr. Steve Chilrod, who was here last month. So, in response to the documented community complaints of symptoms and smells, canister sampling of ambient air was done by TRC, including both 24 and 2-hour community-based sampling. Several exceedances of state and federal guideline criteria were documented in this sampling campaign. Repeated exceedance of such guidelines indicates the need for further sampling to determine the extent of pollution and exposure of residents to these toxic compounds. 1, the subset of 2-hour community air samples that were reported in the TRC November report had an average acrolein value of 3.1 microgram per meter cubed, which exceeds New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's short-term guideline concentration of 2.5 microgram per meter cubed. Altogether, 9 of the 22 TRC samples that I've seen exceeded the short-term guideline for acrolein. And then several of the 24-hour measurements for acrolein and 3 other VOCs, benzene, carbon tetrachloride, and hexachlorobutadiene, were above NISDEC's annual guideline concentration, or the AGC value. Specifically, at least 68% of the 22 TRC samples taken from August to October exceeded the AGC for acrolein. And the other 32% of the samples may also have exceeded the annual guideline. We don't know that because they were below the detection limit. So given that there are few, if any, other measurements of these compounds in this area, these measurements are our current best estimate of annual levels. Thus, the pollution level in Blauvelt is concerning from both the point of view of the annual and the short-term guidelines. Acrolein was on average 20 times higher than the CDC's Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease registry minimum risk level at the intermediate, that's 15 to 365-day exposure duration. And let's see, acrolein was also higher than any site-specific measurements published by NISDEC in 2016-2017 on their website of a dozen air sampling sites they have around New York State. So given that the NISDEC levels and the AT-SDR levels are exceeded multiple times in these data, further testing is called for to understand whether these potentially unhealthy levels of air pollutants are typical for this area. Future sampling should consider use of methods with limits of detection below the annual guideline concentration levels. And also a brief comment of the study design. The TRC study design of the sampling to date has limited value in our view for identifying the source of the chemical odor. There was no real reference site upwind and far from the facilities, and the sampling time periods were not ideal for this purpose, given that wind direction and speed and intermittent appearance of the odor. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jamie.
Hi, my name is Alex Gadd. I am a resident of Blauvelt. I live on Murphy Court, right behind Aluf. I have 3 quick questions. that I'd like you hopefully to address for us. You've heard tonight that Aluf is a terrible neighbor. You've heard that regardless of what you've tried to do so far, they have been unable to keep the encroachment of smells and odors from encroaching on my life and the lives of many residents, as well as potentially threatening our health. And we're still hearing facts about that right now. So my questions are, A, what are you as a board able to do? Because I've seen a lot of effort from all of you, and I know you're concerned. You're members of this community as well. What are you doing now? What's the next step now that clearly the remediation techniques that they put into place that we waited months and months for aren't working? So what's next? Secondly, what's being done to coordinate your intent and efforts with the intents and efforts of the other boards that we come in front of, the zoning board, the planning board? It seems like we talk to different people who have different agendas, and there's not one focused Orangetown approach to this issue. And so I'd like, well, I guess that's two questions, but I'd like you to address those two questions for us if you could, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Bill Coleman. I live at 116 Hayes Street. I didn't plan on speaking, so excuse me for the recreational attire.
It's all right.
But just from hearing everyone else here speak tonight, I've been a passive participant in the process with Aluf. My street backs up right to the wooded areas that eventually lead to Aluf. Happened to have a day off from work today. Did my civic duty, went outside, raked leaves for the better part of 4 hours, only to be met with that smell. We all know what it is. If it looks like a duck, it smells like a duck, it's a duck. We know what it is. New York City has a campaign that they instituted after some mishaps with natural gas, where if you smell something, say something. We see here at this board tonight, a lot of people are smelling things, a lot of people are saying things. I implore you to do more. We have to be able to do more. We know what it is. My 6-year-old asked for a basketball hoop for Christmas. My 3-year-old, who very much energetically taught himself to ride a two-wheeler, asked for a bicycle. Two of those things should definitely be granted. I shouldn't have to question whether or not we should be able to send our kids outside and be subjected to these smells and odors. So I will tug at your heartstrings tonight. I will implore you, let's all get together on this and do more. I rake my leaves, I put them out. It's my civic duty. I don't want them blowing on to my neighbors' lawns. Let's be civic about this. We all have a responsibility in this community to be fair to one another. Aluf is running rampant. This is a subjugation. I feel like we're handcuffed. I'm frustrated with the process. I've emailed out a dozen times. No one showed up to my house. I've gotten one email back from Mr. Divney, which I do appreciate. But the process ends there. I've sat in the back corner of this board meeting for about 10 times, hoping, and tonight I hired a babysitter to be here, hoping to see that there's going to be an answer. These measures for Aluf, which we have asked, and I was hoping for an epiphany with the new scrubbers that are being put in place. The problem has just only gotten worse. I emailed you guys today as well. It was 4 hours worth from noon till 4, and it's choking. And if people at the bus stop, they're not going to get up, or for whatever reason they couldn't be at these meetings, but they're all saying the same things. It's time. I think something more has to be done, so I just wanted to get up and share my feelings. I know you guys are identifying with the problem. If you're feeling the same stress as we are, hopefully we can all come to a resolution and try to, at least have them act more civilly. In this day and age and what we're seeing with Twitter and social media and things running rampant and losing faith in society, it has to start here with local government, and we can do something. So I appreciate the scientists and the environmentalists. By no means am I an expert, but what I am is a concerned resident, a dad first and a taxpayer second. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I was teaching CCD. But first off, congratulations to our board members who were reelected. I look forward to some more time with you in this fashion, as I hope you look forward to this time with me. And I mean that sincerely. I wanted to read to you something that's so important to me because it's so personal, and it's the apology that Christine Todd Whitman gave after she realized that the science that she had been told regarding the emissions after 9/11 was found to be false. And she's very sincere in her apology. And she says, whatever went wrong, we need to acknowledge, and people need to be helped. And I'm very sorry that people are sick. It took her 15 years to say that, but she did say that. And the reality is, people are sick and still sick. I'm sick. I got cancer from 9/11. And I don't want anyone else to get it. And it's no more personal than that. I have been through hell for the past 2.5 years. And I don't want to do this anymore. We have got to be insane if we are allowing something like this to happen again. The scientists gave her what they thought was good information. They were wrong. We now have guidelines, short and long-term guidelines, of 4 outputs from the stack that I didn't make up these short-term guidelines. The rest of the medical community didn't make it up. Clean Air for Orangetown didn't. The government did. And yet, in the report, we exceeded them. And then we were told, but don't worry about it. TRC does not feel that this is a danger to you. Well, I beg to differ, because I've lived the ramifications of people believing something that goes against the science. And I feel like I just keep saying it and saying it and saying it. But think back to my 2 years of chemotherapy and surgery and radiation. And my cancer is aggressive. It's not if, it's when. It's coming back. And it's because of the air that I breathed down there that I was told was safe. And I lost Bobby Williamson and Joe Zadroga and Chris Strucker. And I could go on and on with this. And it's because of a mistake. And no apology in the world will bring my friends back. And no apology in the world will save what I've been through. And my friends say to me, why do you keep going there, Kathy? Why do you keep going? I'm here because I don't want anyone else to suffer. And I will not be silenced. I will not. And I please implore you, please listen to us and look at the data. And please don't make the same mistake again. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. I'm looking to see if there are any other folks who want to speak tonight. I'm not seeing any hands up. I'll make a motion to close the public portion. Do I have a second from over here? From Dennis Troy. All in favor, say aye. Thanks so much to everybody who came out tonight and made comments. Why don't we start with Aluf, just because there's a lot that has been said and can be said about that, and I won't claim on the fly to be able to hit all the points, but I'll just start, all right? I know other town board members and others have worked hard on this issue. But number one, and also we're in a public forum, and there's always folks here who have been here a lot, and others who maybe haven't been a part of the dialogue for as long. So I just wanted to say that there's been a real problem with Aluf's foot dragging, its odors, the emissions that are aspect of those odors, and some emissions maybe you can't smell. In either case, it's been a concern for the community. It's not fixed yet, and it needs to be. And everybody here understands that and agrees to it. It's easy to say that. My point with that is that real work has been done and is being done. And I don't want people to leave this room, or if they're watching TV, with the impression that statements like nothing has been done are actually true. I think it's more helpful if everybody takes stock of what has been done and then tries to figure out what next step are, as Mr. Gadd referenced. So just in general terms, what has been done is there has been a community outcry. There has been a system set up for monitoring and reporting odor complaints. There have been dual enforcement actions by the town through the zoning board's authority and through the DEC through their permitting authority. They're very different authorities, different legal grounds, and different criteria for what constitutes compliance. So that's been an ongoing process. Every step of the way, we all have been advocating, and there's folks on the town board and certainly in our town staff, Vicki sitting here, my assistant, and also folks in the community who have developed relationships with both the DEC and the zoning board and made sure these issues are tracked. Where we've gotten, ultimately, just to jump over a whole bunch of steps, is to the culmination of the DEC and the building department's effort, which essentially was that Aluf was required to design and install an odor, basically a ventilation system that would capture all emissions and treat them to a level that was acceptable under the law and their permit. It's been a long time coming, and it shouldn't have taken as long as it has. Like I said before, they're big on the foot dragging. And it's been complex, and frankly, it just has taken a while to wade through the intricacies of that and make sure that there were times when I wanted to slow the process down because I didn't want the DEC to agree to an engineering plan that we all didn't think was going to be sufficient for the problem. And so we tried to make sure that engineering solution was really going to be sufficient. Of course, the problem is it's installed, I guess, although it's not completely verified as to whether the installation is complete. Our building department was up on the roof a week and a half or so ago and pointed out a couple of defects in the roof that were emitting odorous gases and some exhaust fans on the north side of the building that were emitting gases. Those need to be decommissioned and capped off so that the new systems can capture all of the ventilation that might be going to the outdoors. And so we're right at that moment where that system, for better or for worse, of course we'd all wish that it were 100% sufficient to eliminate the odor problem. We've always hoped, but none of us has really bet on that. But it is what it is. And the odor complaints that are coming in this week and probably next week as well will be happening in a new chapter, which is the chapter after the completion of the supposed solution to the odor problem. And that is exactly the situation where we need to be talking about what our next steps are if it continues to smell. And sorry, I don't know what you just heard, but this is, I think, a fair description of where we've gotten. And if anybody wants to try to take my words out of context or just highlight one of them, they may not capture the point, which is that the Aluf has been derelict as a good neighbor, and that we've gone through a number of steps to get where we are, and there are steps to follow, and the terrain has changed because the new ventilation systems are installed. And that brings up the question of how are we going to enforce going forward if the odors continue. And frankly, I have the rather skeptical view that they probably will. But there also may be odors from neighboring factories, and we need to start shifting more resources over to that question. One of the things that we've found out through this process is that there's always ways of improving our game. And there have been a number of steps that have been taken relative to that. And for example, earlier someone mentioned the olfactometer, which is a tool that code enforcers can use to measure odor intensity. And actually viewed it as a slap in the face that we had been speaking about getting our code enforcers trained in that. Maybe it's a slap in the face because it's a year after it was originally discussed. But the point that I wanted to say for anybody who's curious about the details or nuance of it is that it's incorporating the use of the olfactometer into an amended town code that gives the town the legal basis to use the olfactometer as a compliance testing device. And so you know, it would be great if standing up in a room and rallying got us there, but it doesn't entirely. It motivates us quite well, actually. But those are some things that still are outstanding that need to be done. So that's why we commissioned an environmental chemist, Sander Bonville, to work with us to evaluate our code for odor, for particulate matter, for smoke, for vibration, and for other kinds of impacts to neighborhoods from industrial operations, and suggest ways of updating how compliance is to be measured. And odor is part of that. And we've hashed out, with his help, a number of amendments to our town code, and with the help of our town attorney, Dennis Michaels, some amendments to the procedures by which the town can use these standards to move more quickly towards enforcement actions, because the legal basis of enforcement needs to be there, otherwise you get to court and you lose. And he's the expert in that. So I hope by providing the level of detail that I have, it's sort of given a sense of where the point of intervention is now for our community. I really think that we need to focus on finishing our verification through the building department, and Jane Slavin is here. She's been very active on this, of the actual installation to the engineering plan of what was supposed to be put up there as far as ventilation goes. And that requires some more activity, both on the part of the building department and on the part of the company providing plans and paperwork, and on the part of DEC verifying that everything is installed as they require it to be. And then I think it's probably still going to smell, frankly. So then we're in a situation of enforcement continuing, and that's the issue that we need to be talking about next after all that stuff is installed, and presumably there's still some odor issues, and transferring the full sort of power of that enforcement process to any neighboring facilities that might be creating a quality of life or an environmental hazard as well. So that, I hope, provides some perhaps more detail than most people want to hear of kind of where we are and where we're going with that. I think I'll just stop instead of trying to go back to other things people have said, but let those comments stand for better or for worse, and maybe turn over the podium here to Tom Divany, who's also worked on this issue.
All about Aluf tonight. TRC will do additional testing for VOCs. TRC will be on the phone with myself, Annie, Jane Slavin tomorrow regarding odor testing around Aluf. What's that? Everything. I mean, right now the Avery Dennison's about to enter into a DEC consent order. It should be in the next week or two. So there'll be continued testing. There'll be odor testing. And more importantly, I was hopeful that this would actually work. And I emailed Mr. Gadd and Mr. Coleman, and I said, ventilation system's going on. It's going to be 7 times stronger. Hopefully, I'm hopeful this will work. I don't know where we are right now at Aluf. I thought that they turned the system on. If the system didn't work, the DEC would come in with a hammer and start finding the bejesus out of them. That's not happening. So, and once I realized that, I started doing my research to get us on even keel with them. And that is by looking at environmental attorneys from the city and land use attorneys that can advise us on where we're going to go. If it's litigation, if it's compliance, if it's dealing with the DEC. So we're going to be hiring, hopefully, I talked to the firm today. They gave me an engagement agreement, which I'll give to the board later on today. But, and that's where I want to go, because we need to be on the same level as them. Their attorneys are up here. Our attorneys are great, but this is a specialized area. It's not just Aluf, it's also Avery Dennison, and how we interact with the DEC, because I do think George Swikert has done a very good job. He's been responsive. He's sent one of his field agents who lives in Clarkstown down to Cottage Lane the last couple of days. But I don't think it's enough. And even though I like George, we have to see if there's possible actions we can take regarding the DEC, because, you know, they have a level up here and we're below them, and we were following their lead. And I think we need to hire an attorney that can get us on a level field with them, and I think that's where we are. I'm very disappointed. I know everyone else is, and you know, and we will be meeting with Jane and the DEC tomorrow, and if people here want to meet with us individually or to meet with Jane or whoever, you know, we'll make ourselves available.
Sorry, but we're not gonna, we're in a town board meeting, and we're not gonna have people, excuse me. You're not gonna wanna hear this, but you have to talk to us after the meeting, or appreciate that. Ma'am, I said a lot of things, but that's because it was our turn to respond to public comments. We're trying to run a meeting where we can get some work done. Other town council folks want to weigh in?
Yeah, I would like to. First, thank you all for coming. I know it's tough to come out here sometimes and speak in public, but I appreciate the pouring of disgust, for lack of a better word. I agree with you. I live in this community. I work in this community. I'm never more than 1.5 miles from Aluf almost all day long. So I agree with you. I think more testing has to be done. We have to get background levels, not just from right around the plant, but from the entire area, to see if it is directly from those plants right in that area, or if it's the background of the area of the United States in which we live. We can't let her pick the backgrounds. We have to have her do all of Orangetown backgrounds so that we have something actually to really look at it and compare it to. There was a few things which I think are misquoted. I've been on the board going on 6 years, 7 years. The first we actually heard about Aluf, or that I've heard about Aluf, or heard about complaints about Aluf, not only as a resident, but as a local businessman and as a member on the town board, was from Allison Sullivan maybe 2 years ago. Coming up on 2 years ago.
Excuse me. Listen, nobody here is denying that Aluf exists as a problem.
No, that's not what I said. You know, I never butt in when people get up to the microphone and say stuff. I never do that. It's called being respectful. And we're lacking that in the community, now in the country. So I got to be honest with you. The first that, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the first that I, as a town board member, or as a community member, heard about Aluf was about 2 years ago. And that is the first time that I've heard about it. Whether you like it or not, I wasn't privy to the emails that were before I was...
Sir, I think everybody already knows that, sir.
I can acknowledge the fact that complaints have been made to other... I know it goes way back. What I said was the first I was aware of it. And that's what I said, and I said it very clearly, I thought. So, yep, and I'm saying it again. Okay, so you made your point, and I'm making mine, okay? So the first I was aware of it was about 2 years ago. The complaints have been going back for quite some time. They didn't come to me. They went to previous town boards, I guess to the county health department, to the DEC. But as a town board, and as a town board member, the first we heard about it was about 2 years ago. Avery Dennison only came up in the last 4 months, 5 months, because Aluf went like this. It's not us, it's them. I never heard about any complaints about Avery Dennison until Aluf said, it's them. So then we started checking Avery Dennison, mostly because the DEC agreed with them, which threw a caveat in everything we were doing. So now we're expanding it to look at all of the factories that do manufacturing down there because we want to eliminate it from all of them. And we have been working very diligently and hard on this. I know it seems like it hasn't been, but we really have been. The lawyer Tom is talking about, or the law firm, the reason we're considering them is because they're experts in environmental litigation. And they've had extensive work with the DEC. So we're hoping that they could push the DEC, who actually has the ability to shut the firm down. Because that's the only way we're going to get them to do something, right? We all know it. The only way you're going to get them to do something is the threat to shut them down or to cost them money. We can jump up and down and yell all we want, but we got to hit them in the pocketbook or they're not going to do anything. And that's why we're hiring this attorney. Now, it may have taken a long time, I agree, but you have to build the case in order to go to court. And I think we as a town board have been working diligently on it. I know the results ain't what we want. I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think more testing is absolutely needed. And I think, you know, if there's anyone can come up with anything else we can do as a town board, we can't go down and put a chain on the gate. I just can't do it.
Excuse me. It really doesn't work that way, okay? Dimitri, you of all people know that in order to do an effective town board meeting, we have to observe some rules of decorum.
I'm done.
Yeah. You know, I'm sorry to have to say this because the issue is so important. But to have a meeting disrupted in this way, it really actually slows down the decision making and makes us less effective as a community. And that's the reality of it. And I'm really glad that you're walking out of the room right now because we need to deal with people who actually step up and have a useful conversation about issues. I want to turn to, I said it, but I'm out of here in a month, and you've been insulting, sir. You've been insulting. Dennis? Dennis? I think that's a great idea because the irresponsible party here is Aluf Industries. And so I recommend anybody who wants to boycott or protest or vent their anger, choose a target which really isn't already doing everything they can think of to do to help. Okay, that's a simple message. I'm right behind you. I will be there too. There are certainly other tactics that can be employed to get a corporation to be a better neighbor. The tactic of disrupting a town meeting and telling town board members that they've done nothing when it's patently false, I don't think actually helps the process very much at all. I've said my piece. Other town board members want to weigh in?
Yeah, just quickly. I've worked in the town for a number of years. Going back to 1979, I was hired by the police department. Aluf did smell back then. I did not know what the smell was. It was a smell coming from a factory. As far as I knew, there were no complaints, but occasionally you could smell it. And you smelled it, and then it went away, and then it came back again. Just to that point, I live in Blauvelt. My son lives on Erie Street across the way. I have 2 grandchildren, young grandchildren there. One of my children, at age 5, was diagnosed with childhood leukemia. Okay, so there's a bunch of things, this is personal to me, and I feel the same way. What I want to comment on tonight was, I think that we did try different ways, and I thank the medical community for coming out. And sir, your expertise, I think there's a lot of people in the community that know a whole lot more about this than I do. So if you want to either give us a direction or give me direction, that I will certainly accept it. So I don't think that any of us are looking not to take care of this. I know that I am, and you know, that's pretty much it. So I mean, I live in the community, I've lived here for, God, 35, 40 years, whatever it is. And my son bought a house around the corner from me. He lives in the community with my 2 grandchildren. I don't want to see this going on any longer either. But again, we stepped in, we got to a certain point. Now we have the medical community involved, and they can have a different spin on it. And like I said, you're welcome to call, you're welcome to give direction, and we will try and follow that direction. Okay, thank you.
I expected the DEC to bring everything to fruition, and obviously that was incorrect. And one of the big disappointments was when Jane Slavin, we had a meeting with her, with Jane, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. You had a meeting with Jane Slavin, the head of the building department, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and you had pictures of the roof with open vents, and it was still a major problem. And why the DEC didn't identify that, I have no clue. You know, I see all the emails back and forth with George Schweikert. I also know through the years that the DEC has threatened us with all sorts of fines because of different things dealing with the sewers and the discharges into the Hudson River or discharges from one of our pump stations. And I don't see that same type of aggressiveness from the DEC when they're dealing with Aluf. One of the other things I did ask for Jane Slavin to do was to contact OSHA, which she did, because one of the things, you have people who are working there day in and day out. If there's a danger there, the feds can shut the place down, all right? And again, OSHA, through my own corporate career, the people that had paper cuts. At one time, we used to have to do a 6-page form, you know, for somebody getting hurt at work. That's the feds, you know, and here's the thing where it's a serious issue. I don't know what the final answer on this is. I don't. I know Tom is going in another direction here with the environmental lawyers. We're trying to go in different directions. I don't have an answer yet. I don't. And I understand the frustration, and I wish I had an answer, but I don't have an answer yet. And hopefully, whether it's the DEC, the feds, our own performance standards, something has to take hold. I don't know what that is at this point yet. Hopefully soon we have an answer.
Hey, Jane, please. We should have had you speak earlier, but we got a whole lot of channels operating there, and we appreciate you being here, and it's on TV, so please say your update that you were going to provide about Aluf.
Right, obviously there's a lot going on, a lot of things happening that people aren't aware of, so I wanted to just bring everybody up to speed as to what we've been doing from our side. An inspection was performed on November 13th, at which time there were a number of items that were still needed to be addressed, which some were spoken of this evening already. The open vent pipes, the abandoned exhaust fans. They had installed flexible ductwork to the new scrubbers, which was unacceptable, and the anti-vibration mounts on these new scrubbers were actually broken, which you can't operate the units without them being installed. So on November 14th, I issued a memo outlining the outstanding items and requiring that a roof plan be submitted, showing the existing equipment to remain, equipment to be removed, the new equipment locations, and how they were going to deal with any abandoned pieces of equipment and piping. At that time, I also advised that a final certification letter is required to be provided by the applicant's engineering, so that is Carla Parra and Bart Rohde, who's their structural engineer. This is standard practice in the industry and is requested typically at the close of every project that the design professional of record provide this. Yes, the town has a right to ask for an independent engineering report if we see fit. This report will say that the engineer will say that they're in full compliance. So if they're not in full compliance, then he's lying, in a legal document. So it's a very good process that, again, is followed all the time, and it's part of the building code compliance. On November 19th, Aluf fired up the new system. As everyone is aware, the neighborhood residents are still reporting odors. Not all the work has been completed. So until they are up 100% and these other items are closed out, no one can say if it's working or not. So I received an update from Anthony Lawson, who runs Aluf, today, late afternoon, as he was just returning from Thanksgiving holiday. The exhaust fans that are to be decommissioned as part of the system design on the roof were shut down. When the system was first put up, they were still operating. Kind of defeated the purpose. So those exhaust fans have been shut down. The wall fans in the repro department area are not running, and they will be sealed. They're basically just open. The air just flows freely through them. They will be sealed off, and that will be completed by next Friday, as they had to order components to accomplish that. There are 4 abandoned vent pipes that have been capped. There are 3 left to be done, and they will be done by the end of the week. Permanent steel metal ductwork has been installed in place of the flexible ductwork, and the anti-vibration mounts were replaced, and that's how the system got up and running. The roof plan is expected by December 8th, and again, that'll clearly give us a diagram of what's up there. It's a very large roof area. Inspection of it is difficult in that it's about a 40-foot ladder straight up, and you have to climb over parapets and stuff, so it'd be good to have a roof plan that is, again, signed and sealed by an engineer saying that it's correct. Okay, once these items are received, we'll do another inspection to confirm compliance. I'd also like to address a few questions that have been arising. The first one is, has the building inspector conducted surprise inspections of Aluf? Per New York State Code, it is the duty of the permit holder to notify the code official when the work is ready for inspection. In the absence of an emergency, a code official is not permitted to perform an inspection without the owner's permission. And that goes for any type of project, whether it be a single-family home or a place of business, that they have property rights to. I know not everyone agrees with that, but they do. No one would want us saying, well, we're coming to your home and we're performing a surprise inspection. No one would be happy. We have to give the same courtesy to the business owners. Is a building inspector going out to the area of complaints every time there is a report of odors? I have personally conducted site visits in response to complaints. Can't possibly do them all. I have observed the burning plastic smell and the perfume smell, not necessarily in the locations that they're being reported when I go out. It might be on the other side of 303. So it's interesting how the air moves the smell around. So it's very difficult for anybody to say, well, this is definitely coming from Aluf. I smelt the perfume smell up on the intersection of East Erie and Greenbush Road. That's quite a distance from Aluf. But when I went to the other side of West Erie, past Bailey's and up to Moyson, there was no smell at that time. Again, that was contradictory to the report that I received via email that day. It is very difficult. When I get the report, I will get in the car and drive there. That's somewhere between 7 to 10 minutes. The air changes are quite great. If it's a very windy day, it's gone by the time we get there. The DEC has also sent inspectors to the area on multiple mornings for a few hours of blocked time. We are waiting, though, for their evaluations. All right. So to enable a viable prosecution with an environmental attorney, which we've spoken about, of an odor violation under the existing performance standards, the accusatory instrument, which is basically the summons, must be grounded upon a supporting deposition of a qualified expert in industrial odor emission regulations and related enforcement. Pursuant to the ZBA decision of May 11, 2017, the specific condition number 3, compliance with performance standards shall include the following: inspections and/or testing on site while installations are in operation by town retained expert consultants to the extent, type, and/or degree that the town or the town's expert consultants deem necessary. With that said, I am recommending that the town exercise this option and require that stack testing be performed by a qualified expert with experience in industrial odor emissions. Performance Standard Section 4.16 allows for testing at the point of emissions of objectionable elements. And 4.164 states other forms of air pollution. A full odor assessment based upon recognized standards should be performed that will utilize appropriate standard procedures for obtaining samples for all of the specific compounds utilized at the plant to determine the odor thresholds and the toxicity at the point of emissions from all sources at the plant. Once we determine that, we can either say, yes, Aluf is in violation, or maybe they are not the root, and maybe it is another company like Avery Dennison. And this information then, if founded, is now expert and can be used in the prosecution of Aluf to get them to either stop operating or fix the problem. A full odor assessment includes, but is not necessarily limited to, the following: identifying the odor sources by review of the company's processes, emissions from these processes, plant layout. According to the facility schematics and permit application, there are 5 exhaust stacks. 1 exhaust stack is in the reprocessing department, and 4 are in the internal bubble cooling area. Identifying any other potential odor sources as well, again, open vents or other fans that are contributing to maybe release of odors. These sources would be confirmed by the consultant at the initial site visit. Then they would conduct odor sampling. Odor samples would be collected from the facility's emission sources. Stack exhaust criteria will be determined, which includes stack diameter, exhaust temperature, moisture, etc. And these are all utilized to develop the modeling for the measurement of the odors and the toxicity. The samples will then be sent to a lab for odor evaluation, including detectability and intensity. At this point, a minimum of 14 samples should be obtained, but there may be more based upon any other areas of release that are found during the consultant site visit. Sample collection for chemical analysis. An additional sample from the outlets can be collected for the chemical analysis as a screening for volatile organic compounds that potentially cause the odor issues, which are not necessarily toxic, but can also identify toxicity. They will take that and develop a report, and from that we can determine if they are in violation of the levels that are approved, allowed for at the stack release. And that can be addressed. Again, I think it's better to try to find the source of the actual odors than trying to chase it up and down a very busy corridor with there's trucks, school buses. So the town is also in the process of prosecuting Aluf in reference to being in violation of not completing the fix within the ZBA decision's timeframe. So that is in the legal process now, and I believe it's supposed to be heard in January. I think that's it. That covers my update. You have any questions? Good?
Thank you, Jane.
I have a question. Can TRC do that stack testing? Do we know?
Aren't we meeting with them tomorrow?
Yes, we're going to speak with them tomorrow. They did provide an outline. I wanted to make sure that they would be able to do the toxicity element of it as well. They addressed odor, but I think if we're going to be there, we want to also do with the toxic levels. And I think Sander Bonville's company also can possibly do that. So it might be something we
good.
consider talking to him as well.
Good idea.
Excellent. Thank you, Jane.